Welcome to Higher Results, where business, workforce, and talent intersect. I'm Melodie Reagan, the CEO of Eye Workforce, and your host. On Higher Results, we cover all things HR throughout the life cycle of a worker. That's from hiring to development, all the way through to retirement and even termination. Why are we doing this? Managing your workforce is one of the most critical things for your business. All of our people, they are at the heart of our businesses, and they're what makes our business run. And today we're actually going to talk about that in a more in-depth way with a very special guest. Now, a few things. We cover tips and tools. We air every Tuesday at 3 p.m. Mountain Time. You can find us on IPTV now. We're also available on Facebook /higher-results. And if you miss an episode, come visit me at my website on Eye Workforce /higher-result. You can see all of our past episodes, and you can see them as well on IPTV now. Now, the core of what we do as a show is we're covering HR, business, and your career. So let's talk a little bit about HR, what you need when you are starting a business and developing a business. And I have an amazing guest today with me, a very good friend of mine, but also I'm going to tell you, she is my coach. It's Blair Koch. She is the CEO of TAB Denver West, and TAB stands for the Alternative Board. And what TAB is about, she's going to give us a little bit more on, is it's an advisory board for my business, and Blair is also my trusted advisor and coach who helps me grow my businesses and me as a leader. She works with so many different firms, and we're going to explore what she has experienced with those firms in developing their workforce and their HR function. Welcome to the show today, Blair.
Thank you, Melodie.
Do me a favor, and can we start with, would you share with everybody a little bit about you? You have an amazing background, and also about your organization and what you do.
Sure. I started working at little companies like IBM, General Motors, and EDS, and that is where I learned how not to do things. I'm a change agent. I like to make things happen and happen fast.
Oh, fantastic.
From there, I went and did my first startup, which was a communications company, and I helped take them public at a time when you actually had to be profitable before you could consider an IPO. And then from there, after 3 years there, I went to another company that had just IPO'd, also a call center company. And I stayed there for 10 years in executive positions until we were a $500 million multinational company, and half the team I managed was overseas. And then a few more startups, some more successful than others. And then I hung out my own shingle in 2000.
Fantastic. And when we talk about TAB, what does TAB do, and how do you work with different business owners?
So the Alternative Board is, in fact, an alternative to a board of directors. Publicly traded companies have boards, they have people, they have resources to really help them. Privately held businesses, they don't have that. Owners have maybe a spouse, they have a CPA, they don't want to pay their lawyers, but they need advice, they need a sounding board, and they need people to hold them accountable to help them grow the business, take it to the next level, whatever that is, and for exit. So we do that by bringing non-competing business owners together who meet in a monthly basis and help each other grow the business.
I love my TAB board. So let's jump in and talk about a few things. First off, you've worked with business owners, I know, of all sizes, from when they're first launching their business to when they're growing it. What would you say you have seen, and what do you recommend that a business owner needs when they're first starting their business from an HR perspective? What do they need as an HR function?
You have to focus on your wheelhouse. And 99% of the time, whether you're starting your business or you're well down the road, you don't have the skills for HR. So usually, people might have a spouse do it, or they keep records that aren't very good records and can get them into trouble. So one of the best things that you can do for yourself is to outsource your HR and have expertise guide you through that. And that can scale as you scale the business, so it becomes not only cost effective, but saves you money.
You know what I think about as a business owner, and when business owners are first starting their business, what happens is they're so focused in their wheelhouse. they have a specific talent. They are starting a business in engineering because they're an engineer. They're starting a business in marketing because they have a really strong marketing background, or in HR, like myself, in terms of the background. We're in our wheelhouse, and then a lot of people don't realize 95% of the businesses are actually family-owned businesses. You involve some form of family. And we start off staffing with just our friends and family, which has its own complexity, right? Or people that have maybe worked with us before, and we don't necessarily get all the functions in place. So when you think about the things that, not just that they should outsource and get the right expertise, what are some of the functions that you would recommend or capabilities that you would recommend that they get in place when they're first starting a business for HR?
So, first of all, some of the things, fundamentals they need to do from an HR perspective is have a job description for every function in the organization. So if you start with an org chart, even if you don't have names for that org chart, right, it's like, not what do you need from a person perspective, what does the company need? What are the skill sets that the company needs? And when you're first starting, let's face it, you're going to have multiple people wearing multiple hats because that is all that you can afford. But as you grow, right, it is your responsibility to make sure that you start to replace some of that with additional resources and start to think about, okay, this person over here is really good at this, and I need to take this other set of responsibilities off of them and bring in some expertise that will help that. And so you fill the boxes of your org chart that way. And if you keep those job descriptions and key performance indicators going, right, key accountabilities for each person, then you know what success looks like. And people know that they're going to be held accountable for performing as described.
When I think about that, and you've nailed something, so I think about core HR functions. I always think about the life cycle of a worker. What are you going to do to recruit? What do you do to onboard them? How do you manage their performance, right? And if you just even start fundamentally when you're building your business, if you just start there, how are you going to bring in talent? How are you going to onboard that talent? And then how are you going to have performance management, right?
Correct.
Now, what tends to happen is people tend to think about HR in terms of just pure compliance. And compliance matters. The way you actually put together your paperwork with onboarding somebody, are they a U.S. citizen? How are you filing their I-9s? These are things that are really important and they matter, right?
Correct.
So that there's a process that can cause you exposure. But what is interesting to me, HR is so much more than compliance. Your company culture, HR helps you create that, your leadership development. And one of the things when you bring up job descriptions from my perspective, really important, when you first start off, you're hiring friends and family. And you're hiring people that you like, I did this, and that you enjoy working with. And they may not have the right skill set for what the business needs. And I love that you brought something up that we don't typically do. Don't think of it as a classic org chart. Even functionally asking yourself, what do you need in the business to make the business work, right?
That's right.
Do you have any techniques that you would recommend for anybody when they first start off and they're putting that together and what they should be thinking about?
So one, seems very counterintuitive to you, right? But that's hire people not like you, who have different skill sets. So for example, I am not a process person. I don't like it. I just like to be able to do things because I just intuitively know how to do it. But it's not good for my business, right? It doesn't build equity in the business, and it makes the business very dependent on me. So one of the first things that I had to do was to bring in somebody who was really good at process and liked process, and he held me accountable and still holds me accountable to making sure that we have a process that everybody can follow. So having people that you like to work with is very important. Having people that you like is important, but also making sure that you're bringing in complementary skill sets. And it's not just skill sets, but it's also behavioral styles. So there's a tool out there, many of you may or may not have heard of it, it's called DISC. But really what it does is it measures not your personality, but your behavior and communication styles. So do you talk really fast, boom, 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 right? Do you talk with your hands, influencing, or are you much more reserved? So what are these things, and try to balance out your team. There's 4 different styles with the various styles. And then there's others like Myers-Briggs, which is more personality-based. There's culture indexes. So there's a variety of tools that you can use. Again, as you grow, you can bring some of these on because some of them are more of an investment than others. But to help you round out your team and make sure you're getting full complement.
By the way, I'm actually really big on assessments, and we use a variety of them, just like what you've described through to, I'm a big proponent of strength finders and having a strength-based culture. But one of the things that you're describing in that life cycle, so let's just say, and this is HR, having where you're first starting your firm and you bring some friends and family on, get an assessment, sit down and have a real conversation and talk about is, you and I are friends, how are we going to handle conflict?
Right.
We make assumptions about our relationships, and maybe we work together in one way in one company and we have to work together in another way. Maybe you're hiring somebody that was a peer that now works for you. Right. You need to set new rules around that. And assessments also help you with hiring. So coming back to starting your business, what are things you need to get in place in HR? And I also love what you said about expertise. Slow down and think about what are you doing to recruit, onboard, and have performance management. Consider how you're building out your workforce for the needs of the business. And is it complementary? Because you don't want, if you're the CEO, I don't want a whole bunch of CEOs. I need exactly what you said in complement. I need people who are going to get things done or be the doers. If you're not good at process, you're going to need somebody who is good at process. And it's like getting a logo and a brand. If you get the right foundation from an HR standpoint, it will give you a significant advantage, and it will actually help you avoid some of the turnover that can come with it. So here's what are some of the common mistakes when a company's in a startup mode that you've seen them make with regard to HR? And you've already said one. They didn't have the right expertise. They relegate the function and they're like, oh, my assistant will take care of that. Or they put it on an office manager, and then all of a sudden they have to deal with a dynamic where they have to terminate somebody and they don't even have the right documentation, right?
Right. I was actually going to go there, which is there is fundamental components, which is, not only job descriptions, but building on, what do your performance reviews look like? And there's a lot of, in the marketplace today, there are some people that swear up and down, you have to do performance reviews. Others are like, yep, they have no meaning in today's world. You just walk around the office and give people feedback. Well, if you have a virtual workforce, or some of your people who are virtual, that's a little more difficult to do. So how do you measure their performance? And they have to know how their performance is going to be measured and how that feedback will be received. As you mentioned, if there are issues, those do have to be documented and, made sure that everybody understands the consequences. What does that look like in terms of getting yourself out of hot water, or, don't let the door hit you on the way out, so to speak. Another component is people understanding what their benefits really are. People think their benefits, they have their salary, but when you look at somebody's total benefits package, now it's are you offering health care? And what does that look like? It's a significant hit to your bottom line. So when you are first starting, be careful about what you're really offering because it can grow, in a rapid rate. At what point do you want to bring in some type of a retirement plan? And can you afford to? So you have to, again, work back on the numbers of all of this and really just start to look at what are the total benefits that you're offering your people. Because to your first point, right, recruiting is the hardest thing because first you're bringing in family and friends, but you're going to outgrow that quickly. And it's just not going to work for the most part. So how do you find that talent? What does that look like? And having that package put together is a really important part.
By the way, I love that one of the things that HR, and we don't think about it, HR helps with going back to all those putting in place, what do you need for healthcare benefits? How are you handling payroll? What is your full benefit package? And what does that cost? That's an HR function. And that's one of the things that you have to get in place right up front. Are you going to do payroll internally? Are you going to outsource that? There are lots of firms that do payroll. You can outsource things. There are a lot of firms that actually will do outsourced HR that you can have somebody internally handle, such as mine. I work for us. We do outsourced HR. We have clients that may have the office manager managing the function, but we bring in the expertise when they need it, right? Make sure that they are doing the process correctly and that they can grow with it, and also having resources like my firm to help them with recruiting when they have to get into that place, but getting in front of it so it doesn't cost them an arm and a leg, right?
Right. And to that point, most people think, oh, I can't afford to outsource. They don't want to spend the money. But yet, if you really do your due diligence, you'll find that in many cases it's going to save you money, because to hire somebody who has that expertise, first of all, you have to find them, right? But then, they're an expensive resource. And, oh, by the way, if you do that, you're keeping that liability in-house. So, for example, payroll, right? If you make a mistake on payroll taxes, whatever, you own that. Whereas if you've got it outsourced, right, you have somebody in between there. I mean, you still own it, but they have some buffer on that. And so these are things to think about. Do you want to make sure that your people are doing the right job, or do you like, nope, I've got eye-to-eye workforce taking care of me, in this example. So it pays oftentimes to outsource.
All right, so coming back through, because this is about starting and growing your business, everybody always talks about that magic number of 50 employees. I always look at it, and the regulations do change at 50. The other thing is to pay attention that when you start making money. So if I was giving advice for a startup, it's like, get your base function in place. Definitely get some expertise. If you can do your payroll for a little bit internally. Ultimately, you're going to hit a bump. I can tell you it's going to be bigger than you can do internally. But the fact is, you're not going to want to hire somebody full-time to do it either. It just, there's not that function. So starting up, ask yourself, what are you going to do in recruiting, onboarding, and performance management? And just get some base procedures in place. Ask yourself what you want your culture to be, right?
Right.
In terms of getting those base procedures in place. And then what happens is once you start growing, these become functions that you do have to bring in-house, and that you will evolve to that next level. When you work with companies, when do you see that they start to need to bring some of these functions in-house?
Let me answer that a little differently than you asked it. First, I'm going to go and talk about culture, because we've touched on it really briefly a few times, but we haven't addressed it. And that is, when you first start, and you have friends and family, everybody's just doing whatever, and it's like, we get it done, yay, rah, rah. But as you grow and as you add people, keeping that culture that you started with, where everybody knows one another and is very supportive, very hard. And it changes. And when you're the owner, you're the leader at the top, it's your job to set the company culture. And what does that look like? You might want to keep it the same. You might be able to. But then again, you might be like, we need to evolve our culture because the company has evolved. So are we all in one shared space? Are we in a shared space, and do we have virtual people? Are we all virtual? What's the situation? What's the environment that we work? Because the culture has to reflect that so that it's a positive thing for everybody. And everybody feels like they're really a key part of the organization. And as the company grows, as you get towards that magic number of 50, you have to be aware of that and adapt properly. So I just wanted to make sure that.
Anyway, I'm glad, and we'll come back to that. I want to add one other thing. What that makes me think of is you got to have an employee manual. Once you move to a W-2, you have to have an employee manual. And what's important about your employee manual, you can go find some things online. Be careful. The policies you put in the employee manual can come back to have implications should you have situations. And one of them that you brought up is working remotely. If you have W-2 employees that are working remotely, a company is liable for that, whatever happened when they're in their home office. And we have remote workers. We're set up for remote workers, but I will tell you that we have a policy. Clients can't go into our employees' homes. You are not allowed in their homes. They're not allowed to bring guests in. They have their office space. There are conditions. Even if they're traveling and working in other places remotely, we put conditions around it because we carry the liability. We carry both professional as well as general liability for any engagement that happens with our clients. And wherever our employees are, if they're on the clock, it's important. And by the way, that's something, working virtually, you can get yourself in trouble if you have an exempt versus a non-exempt. And the hourly, and if all of a sudden you have somebody working at different times outside of what is quote unquote normal work hours, you can actually be liable for overtime, back pay, all these minor things, which goes to the liability and having expertise. These are things that matter. And the more successful you are, I can tell you, the more they come to bear, right?
Correct.
So having appropriate expertise in the space can make a world of difference for culture, bringing on talent, keeping talent, ensuring performance. So what do you see in terms of the growth? And when do they, going to that next level, when do they start going to that next level with their HR function, their leadership development, bringing things in-house? What do you see?
I'm going to go to onboarding for a moment,
okay,
because that is a key part of that. So many times, and I remember personally, so many times I would join a new organization. Hi, Blair, fill out the paperwork. Great, here, read a book. Which was like a manual or whatever, and I'm like, is it lunchtime yet? So, it's really important that onboarding process, you're really trying to make people feel welcome and like they're part of the organization. So you're going to do, of course, you got to do the legal paperwork and take them through the employee manual and get all of that done. But then, make sure that you're doing the tour, that you're introducing them to people, that, ideally you have different people taking them out for lunch if that's possible. And before they start, this is like most important, before they start, you have to have a plan of what you're having them do at least for that first 30 days. How are you building on that so that they feel like they're not just reading manuals, but they're actually doing work and starting to contribute? And then you, whoever's managing them, whether it's you, the owner, or that there's someone beneath them, has to be available to support them. You can't just abdicate responsibility for that person. And it's going to take you more time, and it's going to be an investment of your time, but you are the one that's responsible for their success, not them. I mean, they have to do the work, but you have to set them up in that onboarding process and make sure that there's a really clear path, and they know the path. It's like, here's what the first week's going to look like, here's kind of roughly what the first 30 days is going to look like, and then we're going to build from there based on how they're doing. And that's a key piece to that growth perspective, because everybody needs to have that same experience or similar.
By the way, I think that's an excellent point. One of the things that we do as business owners when we're starting our business, we get so lost in all of the administration. Well, you know what? Get other people. Work it out in your balance when you're growing between having an assistant, a coordinator, your office manager, and bringing in expertise, such as having an HR specialist or others that can guide you on those bigger issues. Get it in place. The thing that you should really be spending time on is your culture and your onboarding. Right. I actually went back after several years and I reinserted myself into my orientation. One of the things that you still struggle with as a business owner in that process, and I love that you said first 90 days, get in front of that. The tone that you set with the new worker in the first 90 days actually creates a trajectory for their performance. And yet by the time we're hiring, we are in so desperate need for that person that it's just like we're just throwing work at them and we can hardly get them oriented. Correct. So take the admin off your plate. Well, you know what, Blair, this is crazy. Our time has come and gone. This is like so fast. What that tells me is I'm going to have you back, and we're going to have to talk about a part 2 and developing what I'd love to talk to you about, because you do this for me, developing business leaders, having coaches, getting that outside perspective that keeps you on track, because leadership development is part of HR as well. My last question for you today is one other, just like if you had one bit of advice to give a business owner relative to HR, what would be that, like, one bit of advice? What's up there for you?
Be open to learning and realize that there's no way you can know it all. And those laws, the rules are constantly changing. But even more importantly than that, with respect to HR, relationships. Your business is all about the relationships you have with your people. So invest in them.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
And I want to thank all of you for being with us today. I'm Melodie Reagan, your host of Higher Results. We air every Tuesday at 3 p.m. Mountain Time. You can find us on IPTV Now. You can also find us on Facebook /Higher-Results. I can't believe we actually got that URL, Higher Results. And then we'd love for you to dialogue with us. Please visit eye-to-eye-workforce /Higher-Results. Let us know if you have some questions, issues, or opportunities that you would like for us to explore. We're here to give you tips and tools to help you with HR and growing your business and growing your career. We'll see you on the internet. Have a good day.